200, what's up? Yeah, that was a pretty awesome game last night, man. How about that, man? Set a all-time record for a freshman starter in terms of number of yardage, and I think even more than that was the coaching and the comeback. You know, we were down 17-3. That was amazing, and I was there cheering on the marching band. Go Dave! My son David Walsh, who's a freshman mellophone player. Mellophones are awesome. And doo-doo-doo-doo. Okay, so here we are. It is Sunday. It is September 8th. We're going to go into our course. All right. And here we are. And this is the crack team that assists in terms of interaction and grading. And what we're going to do, we're going to launch right into our weekly assignment right here. All right. So we're going to click right here. All right. And what we're going to do is we're going to go into week 3, and this is when we start looking at some U.S. numbers, okay? And this is an amazing group of researchers that study populations, and you know we're going to get into why this is so important. And so they're defining each of the generations, and then when you make these definitions, and when you look at all the different aspects of life variables that you kind of grow up with when you're part of that generation, then that really then influences your culture, it influences your economics, and it really influences how you view the world individually. And so this is kind of what this is all about, okay? I posted this video right here. This is a must-watch. It's called Millennial Millions, and it's a spoof on the tough times that some millennials have. It is not a cakewalk. It's a very competitive world that you guys are in right now. Okay, so what we're going to do, we're going to go down here. We're going to open up some of these readings, and we selected these readings to kind of expose you to how the research is done, and then what kind of important facts and important predictions can be made by studying populations like the Pew Foundation does. This is, again, a super useful resource. The website, the Pew Research website.org, you guys can use this, you know, for so much of your coursework at USC, your graduate work. Really just becoming familiar with what's out there in terms of data. Someday when you have a job and you're asked to find out information that might be really, really important for you in the business world in terms of, say, a marketing profile, a business world in terms of trends and investing, familiarity with the stuff that we're going to be showing you in this class will really, really give you a kind of a leg up in terms of your job opportunity. It's great to go in and be given an assignment and then be able to go do the right research, create a really nice, beautiful profile with photos and web links and facts, and you go back to your boss and you say, this is why we're doing what we're doing, and they'll be totally impressed. So this is, again, a real way to appreciate what we're doing here. All right, so so what we do is we put in the links, and then we have a PDF file. Every once in a while, of course, when you use links, the links change, the websites go bad. It is what it is. Using the websites is a much more attractive feature because sometimes there's some really neat interactive concepts that are in there. But we always do backup with the PDF files right here. So right here, we're going to look at the first article and kind of a definition of generations. Okay, so we click right here, and here we are. So this is the Pew Research Center, and again, you know, I encourage you guys to kind of look through here and look at all the different opportunities for you to really advance yourself later on in life. Okay, so it talks like politics, media, social trends, religion, as you can see right here. Changes in the culture of our society, science, and then lots of data sets and interactivities. So we're just going to go right here, and we're going to look at what's going on here in terms of defining your culture. So you guys are the post-millennials, okay? So the millennial generations they're kind of ending that group, being born in 1996. So they're right around 23 right now, and the range is from 23 to about 37 years of age, so 38 years of age. Okay, and how their worldview, is really molded based on their life experiences when they grew up. And so you guys are post millennials now being called Generation Z. So you have a completely different worldview based on economics, politics, both global and nationally, and it's really going to shape the world that you guys kind of live in. All right, and that's kind of what this is all about. All right, so we look at behaviors. Okay, so this is just a real, kind of a snapshot of the kind of stuff that you can do when you look at different types of individuals. Okay, and we can see, again, the types of definitions we see here, and who's doing most searching for online information. It says right here. Okay, and so. We're looking at, again, your generation, and by far you guys are dominating the online world, which is no big surprise. It's something that you, again, culturally are really, really familiar with. For people like myself and Julia, we grew to recognize this necessity to continue to be competitive and successful in your world, because it is your world. I'm that close to crossing the finish line, and I'm passing the baton on to you guys. Okay, alrighty. So this is kind of what this is all about, and it goes then into, again, defining who everybody is. Okay, so I am 63 years old. Julia is 55 years old. All right, so we're right here. This boomer generation. We have Gen X. We have millennials, and we have you guys, the Generation Z. This is you guys, okay? So again, this is how they're all defined, and it's good to have a consensus, because that way, when you're sitting down at the negotiating table and you're working for a Congress or some global international company, we're all going to speak the same language when it comes to saying, okay, this group, that group, kind of stuff, okay? All right, so we can look at some of the social issues that have shaped things. So they talk about the millennials, life choices, future earnings. Okay, they're shaped by the global recession that happened in 2007, 2008, 2009. 2007 actually was a good year. 2008, 9. When the wheels came off the bus, and it really, really affected them. And we're going to see at different ways how this has happened. Okay, we again see things like the iPhone seems crazy, but that was launched in 2007. I remember I wrote a program funded by the National Science Foundation. We made this unbelievable education program all done in Adobe Flash. The grant was funded in 2005. We finished the project late 2006, and then out came the iPhone, and we were immediately obsolete. Okay, because Steve Jobs really hated Adobe and wouldn't run Flash on any of his devices. So there you go. So that's just kind of a weird personal example. Okay, you guys have grown up in a technological environment. I see that. Culturally. When Julie and I go out to dinner, we sit there, and yeah, we have our phones, but we're more likely to interact. But so often you'll look around, and you'll see big groups of people with their neck bent, buried in their phone, because that's their culture. Even though they're going out to this social environment, they can't help but have their generation, their behavior, molded by technology. Okay, so again, this is just all about how we define and why we define. A very, very short article. Okay, so we're going to get out of that. Okay, and we'll go on to the next generation. Yes, we are. The next article. Okay, in the second article, we look at some trends impacting the U.S. and the world, and just like as we indicate right here, changes in populations. Okay, changes in which groups are going to be dominating the global political and economic scene. Okay, so we can look right here. We'll click on, again, the URL right here. We can also click on the PDF file. So we'll look at some of the demographic demographic trends that are shaping the U.S. and the world. Cool thing about this is we're looking at a big focus on the U.S., and that was different than the other two weeks where we were kind of had a more global perspective and looking at some of the problems that Europe's going to see in China and things like that, Japan. Okay, all right. So the millennials, which is the generation that is just preceding you. Okay, these 23-year-olds. Okay, they're going to be outnumbering the baby boomers in the next year. Now, what happens too is you become much more personally involved in society because you're out there, you're living, you're working, you're trying to get yourself ahead, and so you're much more likely to also get involved in kind of political forums and political decision making. So you're more likely to get out there and vote. So we're going to see a real change in the coming years where millennials are going to mold the country just like the baby boomers have. Okay, and if you look at the face of Congress, the average age of Congress is like in the low 60s, and that's got to move. Again, we got to pass the baton to the next generation, and that's going to be happening at light speed over the next couple of years. Okay, again, it's talking about voting right here, like I was talking about. Okay, changes in culture. Okay. When I grew up, okay, I moved out when I was 18, and I never looked back, okay? And so this is, right here, my generation, born in 56. I was graduating from high school in 74, graduating college in 79. I was on the 5-year plan, okay? And then, basically, I didn't move back home, okay, because financially it was kind of doable. We're seeing now that there's a trend for multiple generations living in the same household because it is so competitive economically. It is so difficult, especially in the large urban centers, Los Angeles, New York, Chicago, Seattle, things like this, where it's just so expensive. San Francisco, so with my oldest son, Matt, who graduated from SC last year, and he's been taking licensing exams and preparing himself. In fact, he takes the kind of CPA exam equivalent for the California water industry next week down at San Diego. It's a 3-hour exam. He gets ranked. And so we've been supportive of him staying home and getting everything together. He does odd jobs, things like that. And even when he gets a job, luckily, as that Saturday Night Live parody you'll see later on, we have Julie and I have done well, and we have a nice house, and there's room for him to exist in a kind of a separate wing of our house, if you want to call it that, and save his money so he can get out there on his own independently. Now, just to backpedal, since Julie and I were able to do this because housing was so much more affordable. We came from nothing. I grew up in East LA, had right there by East LA College at Floral Drive in Atlantic. And Julia came from a fairly poor section of New Orleans. We did everything on our own. Sorry, there she is. Student loans, and same thing that you're doing, but we were able to really get going because housing was so much more affordable when we were there. But that being said, we had to both of us get really good jobs. Her being an attorney, me being a professor. Okay, all righty. So we're going to try and pass on our good favor, our timing and investing to our children. All right. What else do we see here? Well, we see this big decline in marriages. Okay, and kind of an interesting scenario when we look at this is, especially when we look at college age kids, and even Julie and I did that. So she was 20 years old when I met her, and I was 27, and we waited. About 4.5 years before we got married. Okay, so she was 24 and a half when we got married, and I was in my early 30s, and it was in part, getting our act together financially because we had no money whatsoever. I mean, we really were paycheck to paycheck. Okay, and then we delayed children even more. So we're going to talk about reproduction, and in your case, it'll be the same scenario where you're going to move yourself ahead. So we were married 8 years. So now you're talking, we were together 12 and a half years before we had our first child. okay? Julie was 32, almost 33, and I was approaching 39, okay? And it was because we just weren't ready financially, and we made that decision. All right, so you see this right here. The same thing is happening with you guys, college-age kids especially, is that the rate of marriage is going down, down, down. And when people do get married, they get married later in life. And I saw this really cool article right here that says, not so great reason divorce rates are declining. Okay, so this was The Atlantic. Okay, I love Pocketworthy. It picks and chooses really cool articles. And I encourage you guys, you can see the URL up here, to go ahead and or just do a search on this article. And when you go in here, the reason divorce rates are declining is in order to get divorced, you have to first get married. So what's happening is people are not making the mistakes that people in previous generations did. What happens is you kiss a few frogs along the way, traditionally, and a lot of people would get into early relationships. They would get divorced, okay? Their careers would move on or whatever, then they would find the right person. Nowadays, people don't make that mistake. They don't get married. They kiss their frogs, they move on, and then they get married for the first time with somebody that's much more stable, and so divorce rates are declining. Kind of a cool article, so I encourage you to check that out, okay? All righty. So we see there's a decline in motherhood, family size, okay? So this is a big deal, okay? Because each generation supports the one that precedes them, in terms of things like caregiving, all right? Really, really important. Advocacy. I was a huge advocate for my mom and my dad in terms of helping them out when they got too old. And as we saw from the previous chapters, that's going to be a problem if we don't have enough children, okay? So if you have one child or no children, who's going to take care of you? And that's a big deal, okay? With political strife, this is more of a global thing. We see lots of immigrants that are leaving those countries that are having the most problems, both politically, financially, and sociologically. Sometimes there's just religious conflicts and things like that, okay? We see there's a change in the composition of refugees entering our country. And that goes a lot with the political climate of our country. We have a new president this go around, and this president and the politics that he believes in has quite a different view about immigration from previous politics. And again, this is the culture that your generation is being molded by. There's a good chance that President Trump is the first kind of president you're really kind of aware of as an adult, okay? So yes, things change, okay? We see certain groups right here where arrivals have increased, okay? There was a real push right here from China, India, South Korea for immigrants that would be very skilled, okay? So a lot of immigrants would come here, become college educated, and then become citizens even, okay? Get their green cards, and it was a flux of kind of just a brainwave of increased opportunity to help push U.S. business along. Okay, and then we just have, because of our proximity in the Americas, we have a lot of Central Americans and South Americans moving up. And again, that gets linked back to here. It's because of some of the political strife that's happening. I have a lot of buddies that are my surfer friends that are Venezuelans, and they've been having nothing but trouble, and they've been moving up here. Okay, so this is the last article, okay? And this is a chance to see how each generation is molded by when they grew up, and just to kind of compare statistics, okay? And it's got a real cool interactive section here that you can play with, okay? So we go to our link right here, and we're going to compare the millennials with their grandparents, okay? So there's some verbiage in here that you can look at, and then we look right here. So each one of these, don't click on this right here, but you click right here, right here, right here, right here. And so you can ask, when you're this type of analyst, okay, and again, this could be a job for you guys sometimes, whether you're working for Pew Research or let's say you're working for a large financial institution, or you're working for a large insurance company, this kind of information is super useful, okay? So we're looking right here at race and ethnicity and the composition of the race and ethnicity according to age group, okay? So for the older people in our society, again, this is just a slice. We're looking right at 2017, and we look at this generation that precedes me. This is my generation. The next generation, okay, could have been my kids if I would have had my act together. My kids, okay, stuff like this. My oldest is a millennial, okay, he's 23 right now. Alrighty, so we see that, you know, my generation and the generation that precedes me, my older brother, is largely a white-dominated society in our country, okay? But we see that as we go up here, we see that that there's a more ethnic diversity, and this is what this is going right here. We see the largest percentile increase being in Hispanic populations, going from my generation to the next, to the millennials, okay? So we can then look at marital status, okay? Obviously, we have the highest marriage rate right in here, okay? We see it dropping out right here because of, as you can see, there's a lot of widowing, okay? So this is older age group, people die off, and so that's why when we look at this, who is married right now at this moment in time, you can see that, you know, unfortunately there's a dying off. Same here, there's widowing right in here, but the highest marriage rate. And then you see a very low marriage rate right here in terms of the millennials, okay? Male education, okay? You see that's been pretty stacked, pretty standard across all generations. How about female education? And there you see your big change, okay? There's been a dramatic increase in females getting their college degrees, their bachelor's degrees, okay? Male workforce, okay? Retired, starting to retire, prime working age. This is when you have your biggest earning potential right here, okay? So we see that most people are private, civilian employed, and that's what it's talking about right here. Female workforce, okay? Again, we see the distribution right here, all right? All right, so then we can look at household incomes, okay? So you're not generating income, you're in retirement, you see right here. We see that many boomers like myself are still getting income, the highest earning potential right here, and then this is when you're starting to scratch in and starting to really get in there. Veterans, that was part of the World War II, Korean War thing right here, okay? Not so much in my generations, okay? This is the Vietnam War era, and even less so for you guys. Who's living where? We see most people do live in metropolitan urban environments, okay? And populations, again, this shows a distribution right here, okay? So we can see right here that the millennials are starting to take us over because guess what? We're starting to die off. Okay, so that's what that's all about. And then this kind of goes through it again. You can, like, again, look at the advances in college participation by women, and you know, it's also by men, but really the biggest advances have been by women. You can look at this graphically. We'll just call this, you know, my older brother, my generation, my kids if I had my act together, and then my kids. Okay, alrighty. Again, this is defining each generation, and that's what that's all about, okay? And this is just verbiage that kind of goes over again what I was showing you in that interactive chart. Pretty cool stuff, for sure, okay? Again, this is that same chart so you remember. This is how they're defined right here. You're going to go and you take your quiz, and then we want you to kind of just relax into this. This is the theories of aging discussion, okay? And this may seem disconnected from this, but it's not, because this is what your reading assignment is for next week. So this gives you a chance to go in there and discuss it amongst yourselves, okay? We're going to do some biology. You're going to see why understanding basic biology of aging gives you a leg up into understanding why it is we get diseases of aging like cancer, diabetes, cardiovascular disease, that links you then to heart disease, stroke, and then we're going to finish with Alzheimer's. So we're going to have a little chunk of biology that's very, very useful because it affects all of us, you know. In my other class right now, I teach a class about cancer. 1 out of every 2 men get cancer in their lives, and 1 out of every 3 women get cancer. That's astonishing. So understanding why will be really helpful. So I want you to go in here, and you can understand this is a booming area. So I say right here, the anti-aging field is big business and big money. It is totally because we're not only do we have the development through the process of getting FDA approval of new drugs for treating the diseases I was talking about. So your knowledge about this will really help you when you're setting up your business practice, okay, marketing this stuff, okay. I have so many friends that got into science that are now part of giant marketing teams for the large corporations. It also will help you understand things like insurance coverage, and the nutritional supplement industry is all about this right here. So this is why it's kind of important for you guys to dive into this right here. So I look forward to this, and then as we'll see, I'm going to go back over here to the lecture for next week, and we see right here. So this was the one we were looking at with the theories of aging discussion, and we'll see this very same chapter is now used for you to answer your quizzes right here. And then we're going to get into next week a discussion of how this aspect of aging and knowledge of aging really affects your here and now, which is reproduction and aging. So we're going to get into a real neat section here where you're going to understand how your reproductive window is collapsing on you, believe it or not, right now. Okay? All right, so that's what that's all about right there. So I'm going to go backwards in time. So there's a lot of ways. I can click here if you wish, just learning Blackboard. We can go right here as well, and it clicks you to the weekly assignments. And then I'm going to go back here, right here. Okay. Now what I'll do is I'm going to insert this video right here. Watch this. This is all time. It's 4 minutes. It's all time. Okay. What I'm going to do next later on this afternoon is you have your critical thinking assignment 1 coming up. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to go clicking into this like so, and I'm going to walk you through these directions and show you how to generate your paper. Okay, guys? All right, so for now, I'm just going to end this. It's always a pleasure, and we'll see you guys next time.